This man was the most dangerous operative in the world, but he made the biggest mistake of his life. He saved a little girl that the organization wanted gone. Because of that, he was hunted down, betrayed, and taken out by his own teammates. Except 17 years later, Nightshade opened his eyes in another body. Now, as an ordinary student, he finds out that the girl is still alive, but she was taken captive by the exact same group that ended his past life. And this time, they are going to learn one thing. Some monster should never be given a second chance. The story begins in a ruined Eastern European country, where a man is sitting among the rubble. This man is our main character, badly hurt and holding his piece, already pushed to his absolute limit. His shirt is torn and stained, revealing a serious injury on his chest. The pistol in his hand rests amid the aftermath, showing just how brutal that clash really was. At that moment, he remembers a little girl begging him to hold on, but he tells her to forget him and run. The girl, looking heartbroken, hugs her stuffed bunny, not wanting to leave him behind. With a fierce look, he yells at her to leave, or she would end up meeting the same fate. The girl then turns to run away, but still seems very hesitant. Tears stream down her face as she finally decides to listen to him. Then the girl runs far away, leaving the main character all alone in the middle of the destruction. Suddenly, he hears a sound and his body tenses up as someone approaches. Footsteps echo through the area as a mysterious figure slowly gets closer. A man in a suit and overcoat walks toward him with his hands in his pockets. Right after, he is revealed to be a white-haired man, accompanied by several enforcers. The man in the overcoat calls the main character by his code name, Nightshade. He says the rumors were true, and that Nightshade really was an absolute beast. The villain seems impressed that he managed to do all that by himself. Next, the scene shows the street filled with enforcers taken down by Nightshade. Looking at the destruction, the antagonist says that this was completely unforgivable. Then he mentions that a guy like him chose to meet his end over a meaningless attachment. The gray-haired man aims his piece at him and asks if he has any last words. With a smile on his face, the main character seems to silently accept his fate. The villain understands the answer and tells him he will see him on the other side. Then he prepares to finish Nightshade off at close range. The scene suddenly shifts to a warehouse, where a muscular man is yelling at a group of youths. The big guy asks if they think they can just back out of that job. One of the frightened young men answers that no one told them the gig would be like that. Another man, having a smoke, says it was just a driving job and asks what the big deal is. Terrified, the boys drop to their knees begging for mercy. One of them screams in despair, saying there is no such thing as a driving gig at an elimination scene. The brute gets furious and smashes his golf club into the floor with all his might. Then he tells them they're delivery guys, and if someone pays, they will take anything anywhere. Next, he threatens the red-haired kid with a blade, saying he will silence him if he keeps talking. But before he can do anything, a hand grabs his arm, and another youth begs him to wait. The big guy is confused by the sudden attitude of that kid, who had been quiet until then. With a determined look, Key steps up and says he will do the job himself. Then he asks the man to let his senior go, who calls him crazy for taking that gig. With a confident smile, Key says everything will be fine, since a professional does not just go after random people. But his confidence quickly fades, and he wonders if he is really right about this as night falls. The scene shifts to a room where a man is suddenly taken down by a mysterious marksman. One of his crew gets startled and yells that it is an ambush, while the others start panicking. Before he can even finish his warning, he also takes a direct hit. The three remaining henchmen are in shock, not understanding what is going on. Right after, another one drops to the floor, and the rest wonder if the shot came through the wall. From outside the room, a voice says that drywall cannot stop .50 caliber ammo. Terrified, the men look at the door and see the shattered glass where the shots came from. In that instant, the white-haired mercenary bursts into the room with his piece ready. He kicks a table toward his targets and yells at them not to underestimate a professional operative. Using the table as a shield, he covers himself from the henchmen's fire. The three remaining guys draw their weapons and get ready to shoot back. But the gray-haired man is faster and uses ricochets off the table to take them all down. With everyone on the floor, the mercenary wonders how someone managed to predict his moves. Then he aims at the last one standing and complains about the awful smell of the syndicate. After clearing the room, the hitman stands still for a moment, observing the area. Next, he puts his heated piece into an ice bucket to cool it down. The job is done and the room is completely wrecked from all sides. The young driver, Kay, peeks through the door and freezes entirely in fear at the scene. Suddenly, the operative turns toward him, and the kid falls to the ground in a panic. With his hands up, Key apologizes and says he was only hired for a delivery gig. The gray-haired man asks if Dahlia sent him and figures he is just the driver. Kay nods with a nervous smile, trying to hide his fear while adjusting his cap. With everything sorted out, the two drive through the city at night, taking a busy highway. The kid steps hard on the gas, making the car speed up very quickly. Inside the vehicle, the vibe gets heavy and they ride in total silence. Through the rearview mirror, Key watches his passenger, and the tension in the air only builds up. The gray-haired man notices the stare and asks what is wrong, but the kid brushes it off, saying it is nothing. In his thoughts, Key mentions how terrifying the aura of a professional eliminator really is. The white-haired man just stares at the driver with a cold, calculating look. They continue the drive in that uncomfortable silence, making everything even more tense. To break the ice, the young man decides to ask about what he saw on the first floor of the building. He remembers the women and children and asks if they were also part of the contract. The operative says no, but it would have been a problem if they started screaming, leaving Kay shocked. Then he explains that the cleaners handle the mess, so it costs nothing to clear out the extras. With a nervous laugh, Key realizes the rumors were true, and that man was truly ruthless. The driver then mentions the name Funeral Flowers, catching the mercenary's attention. Surprised, the gray-haired man asks how he knows that name, and Kay says his boss Dahlia told him. It is revealed that the Funeral Flowers are an elite group of operatives with flower code names. The white-haired man complains that his boss talks way too much about things he should keep hidden. But the kid is not intimidated and keeps chatting with that dangerous passenger. He points to the scar on the man's face and asks if that was done by a blade. In a teasing tone, Key says it proves that even a funeral flower can get hurt. The mercenary does not answer and just gives the driver a serious, intimidating glare. Kay's expression shifts and he finally realizes he crossed the line. The gray-haired man then starts telling a story about another member of the Funeral Flowers. He talks about a guy codenamed Nightshade, which means belladonna, a toxic flower. Just like the name, that man was a grim figure in human form, a true menace. But that operative disobeyed the organization's orders over a simple little girl. In the end, the white-haired man reveals that he was the one who finished Nightshade's story. Key listens to everything but just replies with a "so what," showing absolutely no fear. The hitman then aims his piece at his head and says that story must go with him to the very end. Startled, Key stammers, asking what he is talking about. With his finger on the trigger, the gray-haired man gets ready to take the final shot at the driver. But he reveals that he noticed Key's counter-surveillance technique to see if they were being followed. He also says that, despite the acting, the kid is not scared, because nervous people sweat differently. That fear-induced sweat releases a very strong and specific scent. However, the operative does not catch that scent on him, realizing Key is completely calm. Because of that, he demands to know who he is and where he really came from. Slowly, the main character's hands start moving on the steering wheel. In a quick, unexpected move, he throws his hands up, surprising the mercenary. The white-haired man gets confused by his target's sudden reaction. In that instant, Key slams the gas and the car speeds down the highway. Out of control, the vehicle swerves hard toward the safety barrier. Through the rearview mirror, we see the main character landing a solid punch right on the passenger's face. The operative is in shock at the sudden turnaround and the kid's surprise attack. Right after, the car crashes violently into the road barrier. With the heavy impact, the gray-haired man is thrown out of the moving car. Even so, he lands gracefully on the asphalt and quickly recovers from the fall. A distraction pops up when the driver's cap flies right at his face. Then the main character jumps out to attack, revealing his true look. His eyes glow red and he charges forward with a blade, ready for a clash. The operative reacts instantly and aims his weapon, impressed by his enemy's speed. The kid then throws his blade with insane accuracy straight at the mercenary. The mercenary pulls the trigger, but his piece jams at the worst possible moment. Frustrated, the white-haired man barely manages to dodge the incoming attack. A close-up on the pistol shows that the blade hit a crucial spot, locking the trigger. Now the two enemies face off on the highway, right after the main character's bold move. The kid points out that the weapon's cylinder is weak against impacts and easily jams. With a smirk, he says that Desert Eagle pistols are actually pretty delicate. The scene shows the exact moment the blade perfectly hits the side of the firearm. The gray-haired man is shocked that he hit that spot in a fraction of a second. Furious, the mercenary yells not to be underestimated and pulls a new tool from his sleeve. He reveals a dangerous karambit blade and readies himself for close combat. In response, the hero prepares to fight using nothing but his bare hands. Then they both lunge, and the kid manages to stop the blade attack with just his hands. With a numb hand, the gray-haired man realizes his nerves were struck by the blow. Taking advantage of the opening, the main character dodges and sets up a rapid counterattack. Right after, he lands a devastating punch squarely on his enemy's jaw. The hit is so strong that the mercenary staggers backward, completely dazed. Giving him no time to recover, the youth knocks him to the ground with another strike. Down and hurting, the operative realizes those hits were not just raw power. He figures out that with every punch, his nerves were being slowly shattered. The effect was just like belladonna's toxin, paralyzing his entire body. Emitting a dark aura, the hero stares down his fallen enemy, leaving him no chance to react. The gray-haired man asks what he is, and the kid calls him slow and a weirdo with a scent obsession. Hearing that nickname, the mercenary is stunned, because only one person ever called him that. With a smile, the kid asks if he finally gets it, and says it has been a long time. Terrified, the white-haired man refuses to believe it, calling it totally impossible. The youth then calls him a coward for claiming he finished him, when he actually just showed up at the very end. He points out that the hitman only appeared to take him out when he was already fading. The enemy insists he definitely met his end, and the hero confirms that he really did pass away. But, with a wild look, he adds that somehow he came back. Confused, the gray-haired man asks what coming back means. He says it is pure nonsense, and that something like that could never happen. At that moment, the blade on the ground starts floating and returns to the main character's hand. The kid takes his weapon back with a serious and determined look. The villain asks if he is after revenge, but the youth says there is something else. Then he remembers the stuffed bunny of the little girl he tried to save. With a look full of anger, he says he needs to get something back from those scumbags. And to reach that goal, he is going to burn the garden organization to the ground. Shocked, the mercenary asks if he truly thinks he can tear down the whole syndicate. Even in defeat, he warns that there are other operatives just as skilled as him in the garden. Before his end, the man says the main character will not be able to change anything on his own. Showing no mercy, the kid delivers a decisive strike to his former organization partner. With the enemy taken down, he just watches in silence as rose petals fall all around. With a cold, resolute look, he tells the jerk to watch everything from the underworld. The scene shifts to a meeting room where important silhouettes are discussing the situation. A blonde woman approaches a man sitting on a throne and addresses him as Dahlia. The blindfolded man reveals that one of his elite operatives has been neutralized. The woman beside him looks surprised and serious hearing that news. Then the leader asks if she remembers a former member of their syndicate. He talks about the benefactor who saved her during the civil war in her country. With her eyes closed, the woman remembers, and the leader reveals that he himself got rid of that man. The members of the meeting wonder if the Japanese police or the United States were involved. Others question if someone else managed to defeat an elite mercenary. The leader, known as Dahlia, thinks about the situation with a stern expression. He taps his fingers on the armrest, annoyed by the trouble in his new territory. Next, he concludes that an annoying weed is growing in his backyard. Dahlia then orders the blonde woman to notify the other funeral flowers. He sets a deadline of 1 month for the mission to be completed. His final order is to uproot this weed entirely, leaving absolutely no trace behind. The scene shifts to a flashback showing the main character's memories amidst the flames. In his narration, he says that for as long as he can remember, he lived on the battlefield. Alone and abandoned, he reveals that he never even knew his parents' faces. He was called a war orphan, a child with no family and no future. But one day, a mysterious man appeared before him and changed his destiny. With a weapon in hand, this man gave him 2 choices: perish right there in the gutter, or become an operative and fight for his own survival in a cruel, merciless world. The boy barely understood the question, but he knew he had to pick. So, without hesitation, he took the gear and chose the second option to survive. The man's voice echoes in his mind, telling him not to hesitate because if he does not strike, he falls. The main character remembers the intense training, hitting targets with lethal accuracy. His instructor would yell at him to keep moving and use his legs to dodge. He reveals that the Garden organization was not just a mercenary syndicate. They called themselves protectors of global order, fighting for a noble and grand cause. The organization worked in the shadows, neutralizing threats all over the world. Their targets were dictators who rotted the world from the inside out, along with crime bosses, terrorists, and other dangerous underworld figures. They believed that the eliminations carried out by the funeral flowers prevented wars. That way, they claimed to save countless lives through necessary sacrifices for the greater good. The boy just did as he was told, acting like a machine carrying out their brand of justice. His life always ran like clockwork until one mission changed absolutely everything. On that day, it all started falling apart, and his life was never the same again. After 20 years serving the Garden, he disobeyed a direct order for the very first time. And all of it was over a little girl, who made him question his purpose and his loyalty. He remembers being weakened by nerve gas, feeling his body shut down. Even on the verge of fading away, he hands the girl a package and tells her to run. With blurry vision, he begs her to change her name and start a new life far away. The main character wonders why he was doing something so foolish and risky. Then the little girl tears a piece of her own dress and hands it to him with a resolute look. She says that no matter what he says, she is absolutely not leaving without him. With her eyes filled with tears, she asks how she could save him from his impending fate. At that moment, the guy finally realizes what he needed to do to protect her. It was that girl's eyes that pulled him off his path and made him switch sides. The scene shifts to an abandoned shack, where the main character is slowly recovering. He is surrounded by several bottles of eye drops, used to try and save him. He explains that the drops contain sulfuric acid and atropine, which could neutralize the nerve gas. But they only had 20 minutes, and that little girl managed to do the impossible. All by herself, she gathered all those bottles to save her protector. And she did all that with pursuers everywhere, risking her own safety. She did not even think about herself, focused entirely on keeping him around. While recovering, he tells the little girl to rest, since there was no one nearby. Then he asks if she regrets throwing away her own chance to escape. Confidently, she says she does not need that chance, because he will keep protecting her. But he reminds her that he is just a mercenary, not her family or guardian. The girl makes an annoyed face, and the main character thinks his old self would never allow that. Even so, he pats her head and thinks there is nothing worse than owing a favor to a kid, so he promises to protect her until she is truly free. At the end of his operative days, he found himself doing something he never imagined. With a bright smile, the little girl accepts, and he makes his very first promise. Suddenly, the scene shifts, and a voice yells for her idiot brother to wake up right now. Right after, our hero takes a punch and falls out of bed, completely confused. He wakes up startled and realizes it has been 17 years since his defeat. His new sister, Misaki, yells that he's going to be late for school, since it is already 7:30. He apologizes and says he will get ready, because for some reason, he now lives as a student. Misaki then stares at him with a worried look and calls him out for a serious talk. She says he has been acting weird ever since he fell down the stairs and hit his head. The girl also mentions he came home late smelling like smoke the day before. In his thoughts, the guy remembers burning the car to destroy the evidence. His sister asks if he is hanging out with a bad crowd, and he starts panicking. Nervous, he makes up an excuse about a barbecue at a friend's house until midnight. But she points out he hates vegetables, and he claims his tastes changed after the accident. He tries to talk his way out with a fake scientific explanation about his brain rewiring itself. His sister stays silent, just staring at him with a very suspicious look. Not wanting to argue anymore, she tells him to come down for breakfast before it gets cold. As soon as she leaves, he sighs in relief and thinks his sister is way too smart. He then reflects that on the outside his life seems perfectly normal now. But looking at the picture of his new family, he admits none of it feels real. He wonders why his consciousness from 17 years ago ended up in that body. Then the guy picks up the picture frame to get a better look at Key's family, and concludes that he did not just take over the body, because Key's memories still live inside him. It all started with a fall 10 days ago, or at least that is what everyone says. He wonders if the hit to his head brought back the memories of his past life. In his room, the young man hears a notification sound coming from his computer. He decides to leave those questions for later, since he has something more important to do now. With a serious and focused look, he gets ready for the next phase of his plan. Sitting at his desk, he puts on his headphones and starts working on his laptop. On a voice call, someone says the data analysis is complete. The kid then remembers the chip he took from Dahlia's code after their fight. He recovered the item before getting rid of the evidence from that clash. In the operative's coat pocket, he found something very unexpected. It was an antique pocket watch hiding a data chip right inside it. The main character praises how fast his contact worked, who says he used all his resources. His hacker friend reveals he was shocked to be contacted after more than 10 years. But now that he knows Nightshade is around and took out Dahlia, there is no doubt left. Before handing over the data, the hacker asks him to answer a few questions. He recalls that 17 years ago, Nightshade defied an order to eliminate a target and fell. So he asks how the legendary mercenary is still walking around after all this time, and also why he is showing his fangs to the organization once again. The contact asks if all of this is because of the girl named Lilia. He reveals that after his defeat, the Garden organization took the little girl. The girl was raised inside the syndicate as some sort of symbol. For 17 years, she was kept around as a showpiece for everyone. But behind the scenes, she had absolutely no freedom and lived like a captive. The hacker also mentions hearing rumors that she was treated very poorly. So he concludes that the reason for his return is to rescue Lilia from the Garden's grip. With a sad look, the main character remembers the promise he made to that girl. Lilia's innocent smile is the only thing that still pushes him to keep fighting. The hacker wonders why an emotionless machine would do that, but gets cut off. Nightshade reminds him of the rule about not sticking his nose where it does not belong, and the contact goes quiet. The hacker gets the message and finally agrees to send the data he managed to pull. He reveals that the chip contained a list of Dahlia's next targets, and one of the names was a young girl's. With the intel in hand, the main character gets ready to move and put his plan into action. The scene shifts to a prestigious all-girls school, where the students are leaving happily. St. Agnes Girls Academy is an elite high school for daughters of wealthy families. A young woman with long hair walks through the courtyard, while the others watch her in awe. Her classmates say goodbye to her, calling her Shidu-san and wishing her a good day. With a kind smile, she waves back and tells everyone to be careful on their way home. The girls are completely charmed by her beauty and kindness, sighing wherever she goes. Shidu-san is the most popular girl in school, admired by all her peers. Across the street, our hero watches the scene from afar with his phone in hand. He reviews the file on Akari Shidu, daughter of the late head of the Shidu Syndicate. She is the sole heir to one of Japan's biggest underworld groups. Her father was the third boss of the organization and left behind a legacy of power and toughness. And that is exactly why the Garden organization is trying to get rid of the girl. The main character reflects that right now, he is just a student up against a global syndicate. His enemies have sway over the political and corporate elite of dozens of nations, and their operatives possess inhuman special skills, making them incredibly dangerous. That is why he will use that girl's crisis as the starting point for his master plan. Amidst the flames, the Garden symbol burns, showing his sheer determination. He is going to use this chance to build the foundation that will burn the Garden to the ground. Across the street, he keeps watching Akari as her friends say their goodbyes. He finds it funny that a mob boss's daughter studies at such a strict and refined school. With a sarcastic smirk, he walks up to her bodyguard and teases the man about his job. He calls the guy a bodyguard in a challenging tone, even though his back is turned. The man confronts him, saying their world is no place for rookies. He warns that a punk who has never held a weapon would be eaten alive. With a threatening glare, the kid says he is ready to make his grand comeback. Before a fight can break out, another man shows up and says that is enough. The newcomer asks who he works for and why he is going after the young miss. The main character replies that he was not exactly targeting her, but rather them. The bodyguard says he does not need a straight answer and gets ready to brawl. With clenched fists, he steps up, saying he will beat the truth out of him. The man throws a heavy kick, but the main character dodges it with ease. Using the experience from his past life, he recognizes that fighting style is boxing. The security guard charges him with a flurry of fast and furious punches. Annoyed that his strikes keep missing, he curses the kid, calling him a cocky brat. Then he tries a low sweep to throw his opponent off balance. But the youth just takes a step back, showing way superior agility. The bodyguard yells at him to stop playing around and throws a straight punch. The main character catches the man's fist with one hand, stopping the attack cold. With a quick move, he pins the guard's arm and sets up his counterattack. Next, he grabs the guy by the neck with his other hand, cutting off his air. The security guard is stunned by the power and technique of that young student. With a single move, the kid slams him to the floor, leaving him totally out of action. Then he steps closer and tells him to chill, because he is not his enemy. The bodyguard is confused and unable to react to that unexpected situation. Suddenly, a firm voice yells for them to stop fighting right now. Down on the ground, the guard is surprised to see the young miss standing there. Akari walks toward them with confident steps and a very serious look. She glares at the main character and orders him to let Katajiri go instantly. In his mind, the guy smiles, thinking the girl has a lot of nerve. He agrees to let him go, as long as she listens to what he has to say. So he invites her for tea, saying he really wanted to talk to her. Akari closes her eyes for a second, weighing that unexpected offer. Making up her mind, she tells him to follow her and leads him to a more private spot. They walk down a narrow alley until they reach a hidden location. The sign reveals the place's name, a cafe and bar called Savannah. Inside the bar, he compliments the vibe, but notes it does not seem to fit a young lady. Annoyed, the bodyguard curses at him, but Akari cuts him off and tells him to get straight to the point. She grabs a cup of tea and gets ready to hear what this stranger has to share. Akari straight up asks the reason for his approach and what he actually wants. The kid reveals that she is not his target, but rather the mercenary who is hunting her. He says she probably already has an idea why she is being targeted, and that not even her bodyguard could protect her from the funeral flowers. The young woman is surprised to hear the name of that legendary syndicate. He explains they are master operatives, and a whole mob army would stand no chance. With a serious, suspicious look, Akari stares at the kid, trying to process it all. She asks who he is and what he knows about everything that is going down. The main character stares right back with a calm, mysterious vibe. Then he states he is not her ally, but rather the enemy of her enemy. With a confident smirk, he offers to clear out the funeral flowers for her. Outraged, the bodyguard stands up to object, but gets cut short. With a threatening glare, the kid tells him he wouldn't do that if he were him. His eyes glow red and an intimidating aura completely paralyzes the guard. The man is left speechless, unable to react to that crushing pressure. So he sits back down, recognizing how dangerous the youth in front of him really is. Still wary, Akari asks why she should take his word for it. The guy reveals that it was the funeral flowers who eliminated 3 executives in Yokohama. The bodyguard is shocked, since that incident never hit the news. He explains there was an information blackout, and the targets were taken out with a Desert Eagle. And the one responsible was a syndicate operative going by the codename Dahlia. Katajiri panics and asks how he knows so many highly classified details. The main character then tosses Dahlia's piece on the table and reveals he was the one who neutralized him. He suggests they run the ballistics on the weapon with their police contacts, and adds that the cleaners meant to scrub the scene were also handled by him. The guard accuses him of being the real culprit behind the executive's fate. With heavy sarcasm, the kid asks if he seriously thinks he would go through all that just for Akari. Akari's eyes widen as she finally grasps the whole picture. Making her choice, she says she will trust his story, leaving Katajiri stunned. She then orders Katajiri to get the car ready because they are heading back to the estate. Hesitant, the guard agrees to comply, and they take off for the Shido residence. Back at the house, Akari and her bodyguard wait in a room with a very tense atmosphere. Katajiri is totally against letting a suspicious jerk into the house. Right then, the kid walks in and compliments the grandeur of the mob estate. With a sarcastic smile, he asks if the tricolor ceramic in the hall is the real deal. Akari confirms it is, and the guard yells furiously, demanding to know who let him wander around. Ignoring the bodyguard, the main character sizes up the location security with just one glance. He notices the guards patrolling the garden and the mansion's front gate. He also spots the security cameras and the guy working the monitor room. Katajiri is floored by how fast he analyzed the entire security grid. The kid points out that the body armor Akari is wearing is basically just a lucky charm. Akari is surprised he caught so many details in such a short amount of time. He warns them that the incoming operatives are not your average thugs and advises clearing everyone out of the house. In a dark, damp place, a rat squeaks right before being crushed by a high heel. A mysterious figure walks with elegance and purpose through the shadows. It is a woman in traditional clothes, carrying a heavy, intimidating aura. With a twisted smile, she readies her blade and prepares for the hunt. The main character repeats his warning to get everyone out for their own good. The guard questions why on earth they should take orders from a complete stranger. The youth states that they are all useless against the funeral flowers and would just throw their lives away. Katajiri grabs him by the collar and yells that they risk everything to protect their boss. Akari steps in and orders her bodyguard to do exactly what the kid said. With a gentle but firm smile, she politely asks him to follow the instruction. Reluctantly, the guard finally agrees and heads out to carry out the orders. Outside, the other guards question the call, but Katajiri shuts them down. He then lets Akari know that he sent everyone home, just like he was told. Even so, he decides to stay and fight on his own, proving his loyalty to the young lady. The main character is surprised by her cooperation and questions why she trusts him. Akari explains that, even without knowing the funeral flowers, she knew regular guards would not stand a chance. And she figures that to deal with professionals, you need to leave the job to another professional. The kid asks what makes her think he is an operative just like them. With total conviction, she replies that it is because she has seen a real one before. She says the look in his eyes when he pinned Katajiri was the exact same. Eyes that did not look at the past or the future, only right at the present. The eyes of a beast entirely locked onto the prey standing right in front of it. Blushing slightly, she admits his eyes were actually a little different. Different from that cold, mechanical stare of someone who just takes lives without feeling. She felt a burning heat in his eyes, something that deeply intrigued her. A hatred for something, an urge to see a goal through at absolutely any cost. A fiery, obsessive passion that made her feel a weird sort of connection. And that is exactly why she is choosing to trust him to keep her safe. The main character understands her reasoning and accepts their unexpected alliance. Then he asks about the operative she mentioned, the one with the same eyes as his. Akari reveals she personally witnessed her father, the head of the Shida group, meet his end. Curious, the kid asks what kind of woman that mercenary was. She describes the woman as an elegant elderly lady wearing a gentle smile on her face. The woman showed up before her father looking like she was just visiting an old friend. But in the blink of an eye, that visit turned into an absolute nightmare. With that same smile on her lips, the operative showed her true colors. Moving with insane speed, she took out every single one of her father's bodyguards. Startled by the description, the main character interrupts Akari to ask a question. He asks if her blade had a red spider lily engraved on it. Shocked, Akari asks how he knew such a highly specific detail. With a look full of rage, the kid recognizes the operative from the weapon's description. He cannot believe that woman is still active after all these years. Suddenly, he bends over in pain, realizing something is terribly wrong. Akari notices his reaction and worriedly asks what is happening to him. Struggling to breathe, he barely manages to ask what that was. Then the elderly operative appears before them with a sinister smirk. Beside her, Katajiri is collapsed on the floor, heavily damaged. The old lady says the mansion feels like a spider web completely full of traps. She notes that she can see the traces of traps set up everywhere. Then she demands Katajiri tell her who else is hiding in the house, starting to threaten him. With a cruel smile, she shows off her needles and says she is going to play a game of plucking petals. The mercenary throws her needles, and the guard screams in pain as they hit. She tries to force him to talk, but Katajiri holds out and refuses to sell out his ally. Suddenly, Akari jumps in and attacks the old woman with a blade to protect her bodyguard. With a furious glare, the girl shows off her sword skills and her determination. The operative recognizes Akari as the little girl who is never late with her reports. Hurt, Katajiri yells for his boss to step back and watch out for the enemy. The old lady blocks Akari's strike, and the clash between the two kicks off. She manages to stop the sword's edge using just her needles, displaying terrifying skill. Akari gets frustrated that she cannot land a hit on the seasoned veteran. With a mocking smile, the woman says this saves her the trouble of hunting her down. In a flash, she moves and strikes Katajiri, who is trying to shield Akari. The old lady mentions she remembers the little kitten who used to peek at her from inside the closet, and comments on how she has grown up, now carrying the exact same eyes as her father. With a twisted look, she says those eyes look absolutely delicious. Suddenly, the operative senses a presence, turns around, and is completely surprised by what she sees. Akari uses the distraction to strike again with a fast swing of her sword, but the old woman dodges smoothly and gets ready for a lethal counterattack. Akari and Katajiri watch helplessly, unable to do anything against that operative. Then the main character steps in and sighs, complaining about the whole mess. He says he wishes Akari would act like a lady who knows she is under protection. With his eyes glowing red, he stares down the mercenary, fully ready for a clash. The old lady readies herself for combat, gripping her needles and her blade. Her weapon glows with a dark energy as she focuses on her next strike. The kid glares at his opponent with a cold, calculating look, showing absolutely no fear. He slowly walks toward her, radiating an aura of power and confidence. The two professionals face off, ready for a duel that will decide everyone's fate. Akari and Katajiri watch nervously, completely shocked by that operative's arrival. The old lady gets ready to strike while the main character just stares at her calmly. In her mind, she realizes that boy is not just some ordinary punk. He is using practical martial arts designed to take on someone armed with a blade. The reason is simple, because no one blocks a sharp edge with their bare hands. Plus, the arms have major arteries and one slice could be the end. That is why, when he drops his guard on purpose, he is setting up a totally different tactic. He baits the enemy into aiming for his torso or his neck, and when the opponent gets close, he steps in with a devastating counterattack. The mercenary knows the theory is simple, but pulling it off is a whole different story. Leaving yourself wide open against a blade requires an insane amount of guts. She figures out he wants a counter, so she decides to move a lot more carefully. Suddenly, the old lady shouts in surprise at the kid's sheer boldness. He tosses his cap to distract her and charges in with a surprise rush. Moving fast, he ducks under her blade and attacks low. They both move at unbelievable speeds, trading strikes and dodges back and forth. The young guy says he thought he could catch her off guard with that trick. The operative calls him a cocky kid for having the guts to strike first. Then she realizes hit struck her peroneal nerve and is totally caught off guard. The main character mentions it has been a while since he fought someone who uses Silat. He explains that the common peroneal nerve is a crucial spot that can freeze up movement. With a smirk, he praises her knowledge and calls her a know-it-all old lady. Annoyed, the old woman says he reminds her of a very unpleasant guy. She then flashes back over 20 years, back to when she was a training instructor. In the memory, we see the woman teaching a young boy how to handle a blade. She explains the technique is not about raw power, but creating a flow in the fight. The edge should slide naturally right into that stream of motion. The kid in the memory is the main character himself, in his past life, learning directly from her. Tired of not being taken seriously, she decides to teach him a practical lesson. The boy remembers his brutal training sessions and gets ready for real combat. He says he thinks he has finally got the basics of her technique down. With a challenging smile, he asks the old lady to teach him the next move. The woman remembers how much of a monster he was when picking up her skills. That brat surpassed her after seeing the move just one single time. Because of that, she had to hone her skills in real combat just to stay ahead of him. Also that this time she could perfect her true dance of shadows. The old lady focuses up and gets ready to fight her former student for real. The two stare each other down in silence, ready for the clash that will settle it all. The main character says that, honestly, he never hated her as much as she thought. He recalls a piece of advice she gave about piercing straight through the enemy's will to fight. The mercenary is shocked and refuses to believe he remembers her exact words. With his eyes glowing, he rushes in for the attack at amazing speed. The woman gets confused by the kid's sudden and unexpected move. He attacks with an improvised weapon, but she dodges using all her experience. The youth then strikes her peroneal nerve again, leaving her leg completely numb. Akari and Katajiri watch the brawl, totally blown away by his skill level. In a flash, he disarms the operative and catches her blade right out of the air. He grips the gear tightly, proving the tables have totally turned. They trade spots, and now he is the one holding the advantage. The old lady takes a cut to her neck, but manages to pull back before it becomes fatal. Furious, she spins into a rapid assault, trying to shake him off. Her movements look like a dangerous dance with edges flying everywhere. The main character recognizes the Ivy technique and says she hasn't lost her touch. The Ivy is only possible because of her flexible joints and incredibly loose tendons. That is the signature move of the operative Lycoris, which is exactly what makes her so dangerous. But the kid manages to read her patterns and gets ready to strike back. The woman is stunned that he knows so much about her hidden techniques. He taunts her, asking what she is going to do now that her identity is out in the open. The mercenary stays quiet, trying to figure out how that boy got so strong. Then she thinks back to the past, back when she saw his potential to become Nightshade. With her instincts screaming, the old lady prepares for the worst, knowing he is a massive threat. She can feel that the person standing across from her is a true demon hungry for a fight, and she realizes he is the exact same beast she had been chasing all these years. The operative decides to unleash her true dance, faster and more beautiful than before. She moves with deadly grace, like she is dancing through a field of spider lilies. With a fierce look, she performs her final technique to close out the battle. The main character remembers Lycoris' ultimate move, the Dance of Shadows. He knows that is his old master's most powerful strike, so he braces himself. Akari and Katajiri are terrified by the speed and absolute ferocity of the attack. The kid focuses, telling himself not to be fooled by the path, but to track the tip of the blade. With superhuman speed, he dodges and parries the incoming strikes with his bare hands. His movements are so fast they are almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Even with all his skills, he knows he cannot afford to mess up for even a second. The mercenary's blade grazes him, but he keeps fighting without losing focus. He regrets not having his old body, because she never would have landed a hit on him. Suddenly, he realizes her edge was laced with something extra. He figured she would have a trick up her sleeve, since the red spider lily is toxic. The old lady calms him down, saying the toxin just causes muscle paralysis. Then she reveals another toxic flower, the amaryllis, which she uses for her secret strikes. With her opponent locked up, she moves in to deliver the finishing blow. The kid feels his legs give out and drops to the floor, unable to move a muscle. The operative sees her window and prepares to strike with a totally victorious look. She unleashes her Dance of Shadows, throwing out a relentless combo of hits. A flawless strike designed to finish the job without leaving any room for defense. The blade swings toward the main character, who looks completely helpless on the ground. With a triumphant smirk, the old lady believes she has finally won the fight, but the kid catches her off guard again, managing to dodge the fatal blow. Shocked, the mercenary cannot believe he slipped past her ultimate attack. She stares at him in disbelief, unable to process how he moved that fast. A demonic shadow rises up behind the main character, showing his true nature. The kid grabs the mercenary's collar and slams her into the floor with everything he has. With a look of pure rage, he proves that the tables have entirely turned. The old lady calls in pain, totally stunned by the sudden flip in the fight. Her blade drops, spinning on the ground until it stops right at the main character's feet. He then picks up his former master's weapon with a look of absolute disgust. Without hesitation, he strikes her chest, ending the battle once and for all. The operative stares at him, full of surprise and respect in her final moments. Down on the floor, she accepts her loss to the student who finally surpassed her. The main character tells her she still could not catch up, even after all this time. With a pained look, he tells her he will see her again in the underworld. The woman replies that she will be waiting for him by the Sanzu River for a rematch. In her final words, she mentions that blooming in red is also quite a beautiful sight. Akari and Katajiri watch the aftermath, completely shocked and lost for words. The kid staggers to his feet, feeling the toxin's heavy effects on his body. He spits the poison onto the floor, trying to pull himself together after that wild battle. Katajiri approaches him worried and asks if he is okay and if he caught any of the toxin. The main character admits he is not doing great and that he only delayed it with his breathing. He used tactical breathing to keep his heart rate down in an extreme situation. The bodyguard offers to call in an underground doctor connected to the Shido group, but the kid turns him down, saying a toxin user always keeps the cure handy. So he searches the fallen operative's gear and finds exactly what he needs. Holding a pocket watch, he announces he found their next clue. He believes that with that item, he can uncover a lot more about his enemies, and finally figure out who wants him gone and exactly why they are doing it. The scene shifts back to the Shido mansion, where the night is quiet and calm. Katajiri looks at Akari with a very worried, yet admiring gaze. A first aid kit is open on the floor, filled with all sorts of medical supplies. The young lady is carefully tending to her bodyguard's injuries. Once the bandages are on, she says that should hold him over for now. He asks if she is alright and suggests they drop this whole mess entirely. After watching that fight, Katajiri knows that guy is absolutely not normal. He realizes that battle was on a totally different level, way past any brawls he has seen. With his current strength, he feels totally powerless to protect his young miss. Hurt and frustrated, he admits he cannot keep her safe on his own. Akari looks at him with a serious expression, knowing he really did his best. Katajiri says that even if they make it out, her situation won't change, and she shouldn't get involved. He begs her to go far away until things cool down and find a safe place to hide. The main character overhears them and points out that running away is definitely an option. Startled, the guard asks when he got there without anyone noticing. The kid and the young lady stare at each other in silence before he keeps talking. He tells Akari she is not just some innocent kid, she is the daughter of Boss Shido. The image of a tattoo spelling Shido on her back proves the heavy burden of her bloodline. Her violent destiny is etched into her like a curse that will keep chasing her forever. Annoyed, Katajiri yells at him not to act like he knows anything about her life. The young man then reveals he found the name of the client who hired the operatives. Akari and her bodyguard are stunned by that totally unexpected drop of info. He explains that he pulled the data from the pocket watch and identified the culprit. With a confident smirk, he asks if they do not want to know who is pulling the strings. Impatient, Akari tells him to stop stalling and just say the name already. He then shows a picture of Messiah Kuroki, the assistant head of the Shido group's sworn brothers. Katajiri yells in disbelief, saying that has to be some kind of sick joke. Akari explains that her father handpicked him, and he climbed the ranks incredibly fast. He was insanely good at underground business and seriously expanded the clan's power. By running casinos and underground fight rings, he pulled in massive amounts of cash. Even as an outsider, it was practically guaranteed he would join the top executives someday. The main character concludes that he got tired of waiting and decided to make his own move. Then he reveals the name of the syndicate that Dahlia and Lycoris belong to, the Garden. Kuroki teamed up with the Garden to clear out the boss and all the veteran executives. And he also targeted the boss's daughter, so he could take total control of the syndicate. His goal was to steal the top seat and use Shido's resources to rule the country's underworld, and hide out under the Garden's protection to keep himself safe from his rivals. The main character then states his own goal is to ruin and crush all of the Garden's plans. With the whole truth out, he asks Akari what her next move is going to be. He asks if she is still going to run away and hide from the threat chasing her. The young lady grips her fist tightly in her lap, showing her hesitation and inner conflict. Filled with resolve, she stands up and tells him not to be ridiculous, because she is not running anywhere. Her bodyguard tries to stop her, but she has made up her mind to face her fate. Akari thanks her security for his loyalty, but says she needs to make her own choice. She refuses to run without at least knowing the name of the guy who took out her parents. With a furious look, she says such a pathetic choice is not the way of a Shido. The kid smiles and says it looks like she has finally locked in her resolve. She confirms that she never even planned on running away from the very start. Akari knows perfectly well her family's wealth was not built on legitimate business. And if she gets punished for it one day, she will take it, but she won't hand the clan to a coward. With an approving grin, the main character recognizes the young woman's strength and guts. Akari then asks for his name and the kid introduces himself simply as Ki. He mentions that keeping his real name hidden is for the best for both of them. With their team upset, Akari hires him to be the muscle she needs to take down Kuroki. She offers the total destruction of the Garden as the payoff for his services, and promises to throw everything the Shido clan has into cooperating with him. The kid smiles, highly satisfied with the deal and the start of his payback. Everything the Shido clan owns, including their massive information network, their financial backing, and the connections stretching across the entire underworld, and even their sway in the political and corporate worlds will all be at his disposal. He knows there is no better backup to crush the Garden once and for all. With a handshake, they seal the deal, and their unlikely partnership officially begins. The scene shifts to a fancy office where Kuroki looks out at the city lights. He wonders what is going on, since he hasn't heard a word from Lycoris. Then he turns to a hooded figure and asks for his take on the situation. A young guy with blonde hair and blue eyes is revealed, going by the name Campanula. The young Campanula answers him with a totally cold and sarcastic tone. Kuroki asks if he hasn't heard anything about Lycoris's current whereabouts. Showing clear disrespect, the blonde says babysitting that crazy old lady is not his job. Kuroki guesses she got annoyed about having to handle a mere high schooler. Suddenly, the image of a shot hitting the wall appears, and the guy gets startled. Furious, Kuroki yells at him to quit the nonsense and suggests she might have been eliminated. Campanula provokes him, saying they think they are the absolute strongest operatives around. But Kuroki cuts him off before he finishes, heavily scolding the young man. In a flash, the kid appears right behind him, holding a blade to his neck. Kuroki is stunned by the sheer speed and boldness of the younger mercenary. The kid warns him not to get it twisted, as they are only helping him for the Garden's own goals. He makes it very clear the funeral flowers are not his pawns, making Kuroki apologize fast. Leaving a tiny warning scratch on his neck, the blonde tells him to watch his mouth next time. He then steps back, and Kuroki watches him with a mix of fear and pure anger. The young operative leans against the wall, wearing a look of total disdain and superiority. Kuroki decides it does not matter if a schoolgirl is around or not, since it won't change the big picture. All the annoying veteran executives are gone, leaving his path completely clear. He declares the Shido clan is his, and he will use its power to rule the whole underworld. With an evil smirk, Campanula says everything will be done in the name of the Garden. 2 days later, the scene shifts to a very crowded underground casino. People are betting and having a blast surrounded by luxury and heavy showing off. The The roulette wheels spin, cards are dealt out, and the adrenaline is pumping. A wealthy guy celebrates his big win while a beautiful woman hangs by his side. An elegant hostess welcomes a brand new group of guests at the door. The main character rolls into the casino wearing a sharp suit, alongside Akari and her bodyguard. He scans the room with a sharp, calculating look, checking out every single detail. With a confident smile, he announces that the show is finally about to start. This is the very first step in his massive counterattack against the garden. The slot machines and roulette tables are going non-stop all across the casino floor. The cards are shuffled up, and the real power play is about to kick off for good. Rich and powerful people are having a great time with their beautiful dates. The main character and Akari stroll through the floor, catching plenty of curious looks. A classy woman spots the young lady and whispers something to her partner. They think she is way too young to be there, but one of them feels like he has seen her before. Katajiri complains they are drawing way too much attention, but the kid totally ignores him. With a satisfied smirk, he says everything is going exactly as they planned. The scene flashes back to the Shido mansion, where they mapped out the whole scheme. The bodyguard and Akari listen closely to all of the main character's instructions. Annoyed, Katajiri calls him an idiot for putting the young miss in danger. He questions why she has to march right into enemy turf, and the kid answers him. The guard argues that if the goal was just to eliminate Kuroki, he could have handled it solo. The young guy then breaks down the fallout of acting so recklessly. If Kuroki goes down without a clear successor lined up, the Shido group will totally collapse. Katajiri gets the logic and goes quiet, frustrated by how delicate the situation is. The main character then suggests Akari publicly challenge the traitor Kuroki and claim his spot. That way everyone in the syndicate will know exactly who the rightful heir is. Once she claims the title, the men will follow her lead without a single question. With the plan locked in, Akari orders Katajiri to call up a high-end dress shop. She needs a brand new outfit that fits the biggest night of her entire life. The main character smiles, highly satisfied with the girl's guts and determination. In the casino's VIP room, an underling whispers directly into Kuroki's ear. He reports that the young miss of the Shido group just walked onto the floor. Kuroki is shocked and annoyed she is still walking around, plus she brought 2 guards. Campanula, wearing a twisted grin, offers to go handle her right then and there. But Kuroki stops him, telling him not to pull anything in front of all the paying clients. He orders them to treat her like any other guest for now, with absolutely no special treatment. The subordinate and the young operative agree and step out of the VIP room. Katajiri mentions that the rumors about Kuroki being a traitor are completely true. The main character then reveals the next step of the plan, dragging him out into the open. Akari looks back with a fierce expression, totally ready for the final showdown. With a smirk, she decides to have a little fun before they get straight to business. They walk up to a blackjack table where a few guys are already playing. The dealer apologizes, letting her know that table has a very high minimum bet. He explains that the lowest wager at that table starts at 1 million yen. The main character then pops open a briefcase stuffed with cash, shocking everyone around. Akari says she does not mind, since she is not a fan of playing for chump change anyway. With a quick apology, the dealer invites her to sit down and kicks off the game. He skillfully shuffles the deck and gets everything ready for the next round. Laying the cards on the table, he wishes her luck as the high-stakes game begins. An hour later, the tension at the table is super heavy, and the other players are sweating. Akari has stacked up a massive mountain of chips, leaving everyone else in the dust. The dealer calls no more bets and flips his cards with a very stressed look. Akari's cards add up perfectly to 21, locking in another big win. Panicking, the dealer simply cannot believe the young girl's absolutely insane luck. He flips his next card, revealing that the house busted once again. Sweating bullets, he can barely hold the deck with his shaking hands. With a snap of his fingers, the main character signals Akari's next move. She drops an 8 of hearts on the table, scoring another flawless blackjack. The perfect combo of an ace and a 10 guarantees her an instant victory. The other players yell in disbelief, openly accusing Akari of cheating. The main character smirks, highly satisfied as he watches the whole thing unfold. He explains that blackjack is not just a game of pure luck, but heavily relies on strategy. The technique of card counting assigns a value to every single card to track the odds. The legend of an MIT student team using that trick to win millions is pretty famous. But what Key is doing right now goes way beyond some urban legend. He is memorizing every single card that leaves the deck with absolutely unbelievable accuracy. And with every new card flipped, he instantly recalculates the exact probabilities. Then he passes the answer right to Akari using very subtle light signals. Compared to the chaos of a battlefield, keeping track of 6 decks is a total walk in the park. It requires high-speed thinking that only Nightshade could realistically pull off. The terrified dealer clears the table while Akari keeps tossing out massive bets. With an icy glare, she says she is not done having fun yet and asks to be hit again. The guy is practically shaking, knowing another huge loss could seriously cost him. He is terrified his bosses will make him take responsibility for bleeding the house dry. Suddenly, a voice interrupts the game and Kuroki shows up to confront Akari himself. The girl glares at him with pure disgust and points out it has been a while. With a fake smile, he claims that if he knew she was coming, he would have rolled out the red carpet. Kuroki greets her with a deeply cynical bow, putting his total disrespect on display. Katajiri tells him to drop the act, but the traitor completely ignores him. Kuroki looks at Akari's giant stack of chips and congratulates her on her lucky streak. He says he will cash out all her winnings, but asks her to call it a night. And as a gift, he offers her a stack of cash to go have fun somewhere else with her friends. Akari stares him down coldly, instantly rejecting the guy's humiliating offer. She calls him a rat who moved into her father's castle and just got fat, and accuses him of acting like he runs the place just because his florist friends helped him out. Kuroki loses his cool for a second, letting his anger and disdain slip out. The other players start whispering, realizing Akari is the daughter of the former boss. One of them tells her to stop playing with fire for her own sake. Akari agrees and stands up from the table, totally ready for the real game. She announces she is bored of card games and wants something way more thrilling. With a challenging look, she suggests trying out the club's absolute most popular attraction. Kuroki catches the reference and a wicked smirk spreads across his face. He realizes she is talking about the Scarlet Cage, their underground fighting ring. A place with zero rules, where fighters clash until the end just for the entertainment of the rich. Akari proposes a bet where they each put a piece in the ring, and the last one standing wins. Kuroki tries to brush it off, saying there are no events scheduled for tonight. But Akari cuts him off and lays out exactly what she is willing to put on the line. She bets absolutely everything she inherited from her father, and he has to bet the entire casino. Kuroki is stunned by the sheer boldness of the offer, a fight for the future of the Shido clan. Word spreads through the casino, and everyone gets hyped for the insane showdown about to happen. In his head, Kuroki knows that backing down now would completely ruin his reputation. With a taunting smile, Akari asks if he is actually going to run from a challenge. Annoyed and backed into a corner, Kuroki grits his teeth and makes his call. He says it sounds like a fun time and accepts the bet just so he does not look like a coward. The two stare each other down intensely, officially sealing the deal for the final showdown. The main character watches the whole thing unfold with a very satisfied and confident look. He knows his plan is working flawlessly and that the enemy walked right into his trap. The VIP room door shuts tight, and the prep for the massive event kicks off. In a security room, Companionla watches it all with a totally twisted grin. The cameras show the entire conversation between Akari, Kuroki, and the main character. The young mercenary seems to be having a blast watching the whole situation unfold. With a look of pure joy, he gets ready to sit back and enjoy the brutal show. Two heavy guards block the entrance to the underground fighting arena. The cage is set, and the crowd is eagerly waiting for the main event to start. The lights flare up, and the audience goes absolutely wild at the promise of a huge show. The crowd screams and cheers, totally hyped for the violence that is about to drop. The announcer steps into the ring, and the spotlight hits the center for the main event. He welcomes everybody to the Scarlet Cage, the underground ring with absolutely zero rules, and announces that, even though it wasn't on the schedule, a very special bout is happening right now. He tells the lucky folks in the crowd that they are about to witness a truly unique clash. In the red corner, he introduces the undefeated champion of the ring, Takeshi Kinju the Smasher, a heavy hitter feared and loved by the entire crowd. And in the blue corner, he announces the mystery challenger that nobody has ever seen before. The main character steps into the ring wearing his black suit, looking completely focused and serious. The announcer introduces him simply as the mystery fighter, going by the codename K. The crowd laughs at his slim build, doubting he will even last a full minute in there. The champion comes from a full contact karate background and has never taken a loss. Katajiri asks nervously if the kid can really handle a massive guy like that. He knows how strong the main character is, but the champion looks completely unstoppable. Calm and confident, the kid replies that he is not actually a fighter. The announcer makes it clear that weapons are banned, but everything else is totally fair game. The two opponents stare each other down, totally ready for the brutal match to kick off. Before the ref even finishes talking, the champion rushes in to start the assault. He throws a massive punch, but the main character blocks it easily with his arms. The crowd screams, thinking the challenger is totally frozen and cannot even move. They hype Kinju up, telling him to crush the kid and end the fight as fast as possible. The scene shows the champion throwing an absolute storm of hits at the young guy. Kuroki watches the fight with a smoke in his hand, looking at them with total disdain. He notices the kid is constantly parrying the core of Kinju's heavy strikes. Using precise, tight movements, he blocks the onslaught without ever stepping back. And the craziest part is, he hasn't moved a single inch from where he started. Kuroki finds the trick amusing, but knows it will not be enough to pull off a win. He turns to Akari and reminds her about the harsh, brutal reality of the underworld, where regular martial arts are useless and only raw violence comes out on top. The champ keeps attacking furiously, but still cannot land a single clean hit. Kuroki claims that what really decides the winner is pure, unfiltered violence. He then touches Akari's shoulder in a disrespectful, possessive kind of way, and warns her that after this is over, he is going to have to teach her a harsh lesson too. With a sick smile, he says that even a pet needs to learn some discipline. He laughs to himself, incredibly satisfied with his own power and control over the whole room. Akari calls him an absolute joke and says he is nothing but a lapdog for the garden. Disgusted, she tells him his whole attitude makes her feel totally sick and repulsed. Kuroki loses his temper and angrily smashes his smoke right into the ashtray. He yells at Kinju to stop messing around and put an end to the fight already. Suddenly, he notices that something is very wrong with his undefeated fighter. The heavy hitter is panting and sweating bullets, physically unable to keep attacking. The main character stares at him with a mocking grin, his tie hanging loose. Katajiri is stunned to see Kinju gassing out, even though he is the only one throwing punches. The kid taunts him, asking if he can't even lift a single finger anymore. With one perfectly placed hit, he strikes the champion's jaw with everything he has. The big guy drops from the impact, completely defeated by one single punch. Total silence takes over the arena as the giant's body lays perfectly still on the mat. The crowd is in absolute shock, unable to believe what they just witnessed. The ref starts the count, and Katajiri wonders what he did to end it so fast. The kid explains that the first thing you have to do when taking down a beast is break its fangs. Confused, the guard does not understand what he means by that at all. Suddenly, the referee drops to the floor unconscious, shocking everyone in the room. Katajiri finally realizes the main character's target was never the champion in the first place. Amidst the total chaos, Campanula pops up and starts knocking out everyone in sight. A mysterious shadow moves through the men, dropping them one by one effortlessly. Nobody understands what is happening, and absolute panic spreads through the arena. The young mercenary moves like a ghost, taking down anyone who crosses his path. With a heavy kick, he knocks out yet another one of Kuroki's henchmen. In just a few seconds, practically everyone in the arena is out cold on the floor. The scene is a total wreck with unconscious folks scattered everywhere you look. The main character jokes that the casino isn't being very hospitable to its guests today. Looking annoyed, he glares at the young operative and asks what exactly he thinks he is doing. Campanula claims he just put them to sleep and introduces himself as the closer. He gets ready to step into the ring and carry out his actual mission, and explains he cannot let some amateur actors completely ruin the script. The kid gets confused by the mention of a script and what he actually means by it. The blonde reveals that if they won there, all their hard work would be completely trashed. He then points to the knocked-out announcer in the ring and explains his setup, saying he is going to make it look like the match never happened so he doesn't mess things up. Left with no choice, Kuroki agrees and lets the young mercenary do whatever it takes. With a twisted smile, Campanula drops a fake apology and gets ready to strike. He jumps up and throws a heavy kick straight toward the main character. The kid recognizes the move as a scythe kick, a lethal strike aimed right at the carotid artery. The blonde realizes he is a solid user and asks what specific style he actually practices. Silat is a traditional martial art from Southeast Asia that includes several different forms. Because it is so effective in combat, it has been adopted by the military and special forces everywhere, featuring hundreds of variations that cover everything from unarmed brawling to blade techniques and joint locks. Silat is a wildly versatile fighting style. With his eyes glowing red, the main character readies himself for the upcoming clash. He thinks back to his intense training sessions, where he fully mastered the art of Silat. In the blink of an eye, he steps forward and hits Campanula with a massive palm strike. The young operative is totally caught off guard and gets launched backward by the impact. The kid coughs in pain, staring at his opponent with a mix of total shock and anger. A little redness drips from his mouth as he tries to recover from the surprise hit. Katajiri is floored to see he knocked the guy down with just one single move. Kuroki and Akari watch the whole scene unfold, looking completely surprised and impressed. The main character's sheer speed and power go way beyond normal human limits. Hurt, he asks if Campanula is also a member of the Funeral Flowers Syndicate. The young guy confirms it and introduces himself as Campanula, the Flower of Gratitude. With a twisted grin, he thanks him for a fun game at the very end of a boring job. The two mercenaries lock eyes in the ring, totally ready to kick off round 2. The main character says the pleasure is all his and prepares for the next exchange. With a wild look, he states that now he can fight without holding anything back. The crowd, or what's left awake of it, watches in silence, shocked by the crazy turn of events. Katajiri simply cannot believe what he is witnessing and is left totally speechless. Kuroki and Akari keep a close eye on every single move the two fighters make. The guy admits he absolutely does not want to take another palm strike like that ever again. Campanula stares him down with a challenging smirk, completely ready to trade blows. In his head, the main character knows he needs to figure out the kid's fighting style. The young operative taunts him, pointing out that the whole stage suddenly went quiet. He asks if his opponent ran out of material for his improv act and dares him to attack. Moving incredibly fast, he charges in and throws a punch straight at the main character. The kid is surprised by how fast he is, but barely manages to slip out of the way. The blonde keeps pressing the attack with a rapid and precise flurry of punches. The two trade strikes at top speed in a highly dangerous dance of skill and pure power. The main character analyzes his opponent's patterns and notices something very strange. He dodges the young mercenary's rapid punches with a clearly confused expression. His moves are fast, but the path is way too easy for an experienced fighter to read. The attacks are super obvious and predictable, so they don't really pose a major threat. It is totally different from the refined martial skills of Lycoris, his old master. Surprised, Campanula wonders why none of his hits are landing on the target. He keeps attacking furiously, but the main character slips past every single strike easily. The young operative finally clips his opponent's arm with a quick palm strike. He steps back to prep his next move, still stunned by how good the kid actually is. Katajiri cheers at the hit, but the fight is still far from being over. Campanula realizes he just struck the radial nerve right in his upper arm. With a smirk, he recognizes the move as the gunting technique from Silat. But he notices that instead of the forearm, the kid used the pisiform bone for the hit. Shocked, he wonders if that could possibly be the legendary method of defeat. The main character confirms it and asks if the move is making a comeback these days. He reveals it was a forbidden art meant specifically for taking down targets buried in history, and that the last person to use it passed away 17 years ago, leaving the style forgotten. Throwing a heavy kick, he attacks Campanula, who dodges it with smooth agility. The young operative fires back with a palm strike, but it gets completely blocked. The main character manages to stop the attack with his arm, absorbing the heavy impact. He is surprised by the sheer force of the blow and how skilled his opponent really is. With an excited grin, Campanula calls him interesting and says he wants to see more. The kid preps for the next exchange, knowing he absolutely cannot underestimate this guy. They trade heavy punches and kicks at lightning speed in a very evenly matched fight. The young mercenary moves so fast he creates afterimages to try and confuse him, but the main character doesn't fall for it and dodges all the incoming hits with ease. Campanula knows that martial artists read the setup movements of their opponents. They predict the next action so they can react fast enough to block or dodge. Otherwise, keeping up with exchanges that last fractions of a second would be impossible. But he realizes the guy is actually dodging his attacks after he sees them coming. Campanula wonders if his reaction speed is literally beyond human limits. The main character then surprises him with an overhead strike while he is mid-air. With a confident smirk, he gets ready to end the fight once and for all. In one explosive move, he slams him into the floor with the full force of the impact. The young operative hits the deck hard, but manages to scramble back up quickly. Katajiri yells Kei's name, clearly worried about how the fight is going to end. Akari watches the scene in silence, totally shocked by how brutal the clash has gotten. Kuroki leans forward, eager to see who comes out on top in this mercenary showdown. He brags loudly, saying this is what the true violence of the underworld looks like, and that the real contest is simply about who walks away holding the prize. Akari calls him a total coward, reminding him that he only talks big but never acts. She threatens him, saying that once this is over, he is going to pay a massive price. The main character stands his ground, fully ready to keep fighting without breaking a sweat. The two operatives lock eyes once again right in the middle of the wrecked ring. The kid then reveals he figured out exactly what Campanula's special ability is. He points out that the young mercenary's main trait is his artificially enhanced nerves. With a highly excited smile, the blonde confirms it and brags about being totally unique. He explains his nervous system was hyper-developed using stem cell transplants. His axons are much thicker, and his nerves are way tougher than an average person's. The main character realizes that is exactly why his reaction time is so incredibly absurd. Campanula explains a normal human takes about 0.2 seconds to react, but he can react in 0.02 seconds, basically on the same level as a cat. To him, the whole world looks like it is moving in totally slow motion, frame by frame. The main character figures out his heavy palm strike works off the exact same trick. Akari and her bodyguard watch the whole thing, totally amazed by that crazy reveal. The kid reveals his proprioception is unnaturally sharp because of it. He can feel every single muscle twitch and channel all his power right into one spot. The young operative compares it to the advanced Fefa Jin technique from Chinese martial arts, and brags that for him, pulling off a move like that is as easy as breathing. He mocks Dahlia and Lycors for being stuck with human limits, despite all their training. The main character agrees, but asks if having eyes like that isn't a massive headache in daily life. Campanula looks totally confused by his opponent's random question. Then the guy asks about watching movies, wondering if they just look like a glitchy flip book to him. The young mercenary admits, looking visibly annoyed, that that part actually really sucks. Kei then says that if those are all the tricks he has, it is finally time to wrap this up. The blonde agrees, saying he is going to hand his rival his totally boring flip book ending. A red aura wraps around the main character as he gears up for his absolute final move. The young guy accepts the challenge with a grin, saying he will watch his final scene right to the very end. From afar, Akari and Katajiri watch the intense pressure between the two skyrocket. Kei realizes that his opponent's reflexes are completely and utterly unbalanced. Because of that, any normal attack he throws will easily get blocked or parried. The kid understands that straight-up strikes will not work against that kind of speed, and that means there is only one real path to victory in this exact moment. His only shot is a perfectly timed counterattack, since right with his enemy's own strike. But the young operative smirks, because that is exactly what he wanted him to think. Campanula mocks him, saying he got way too confident after landing that last hit. Then he reveals he let that attack connect completely on purpose. With that, the blonde proves he can easily react even to his opponent's fastest counter. The kid is caught totally off guard and cannot block the enemy's incredibly fast move. He takes a massive punch straight to the face that sends him flying backward. The opponent explains that any surprise attack is already factored right into his script. He loves watching his enemies cling to the totally fake hope he hands them. Throwing a devastating kick, he launches the kid straight up into the air. The blonde operative yells for him to meet his end as he attacks with absolutely everything he has. But the main character somehow manages to stay on his feet after taking that heavy blow. The young guy taunts him to try another counter, claiming this will be his grand finale. The kid just stares back at him with an incredibly serious, determined expression. Campanula gets confused seeing he is not moving at all, asking why he isn't striking back. He decides it does not matter, since from this range, a counter would be totally useless. Believing the fight is already wrapped up, he throws his final punch to finish it all. But at the very last second, the main character's body shifts just slightly to the side. The young mercenary is absolutely stunned, not understanding what just went down, because Kei's counterattack was actually launched before his punch was even thrown. His hyper-reaction only works against threats that he can visibly notice. And in that exact instant the strike landed, the tips of the kid's fingers gently tapped the spot right between the blonde's eyebrows. That is the secret technique of Lankamati, known as the Venom Needle. It is a strike that hits the trigeminal nerve, totally paralyzing information transmission. But the moment the target enters a state of absolute extreme focus, the technique turns into a toxin that slowly destroys the enemy's senses over time. With a smirk, Kei asks what he thought of his grand script's big final. Right after, the main character hits him with a completely devastating palm strike to the chest. The force of the impact is so massive that the guy gets violently thrown backward. He gets slammed into the floor with totally crushing power. The blonde operative coughs in pain, completely dazed by the sudden flip in the fight. The ground shatters into 1,000 pieces from the sheer violence of the impact. Everyone watching is in absolute shock, refusing to believe what they just saw. Down on the floor, the young mercenary says it is impossible and demands to know what he did. The kid answers calmly that he just touched him and that he was absolutely not lying. Actually, Key did not attack him directly, he just set up his own stance. He locked his upper body in place using his back and spinal muscles. Then, pushing his forearms out, he essentially turned himself into a solid stake. It is like a weightlifter tensing their entire body just to handle a massive load. The lifter's body becomes a pillar, and Key used that exact same logic. He turned his body into a stake firmly rooted straight into the earth. By doing that, he completely blocked the path of all the force Campanula threw at him. The kinetic energy from the blow then bounced right back into the blonde boy's own body. In other words, it was like the blonde threw himself full speed against a spear stuck in the ground. That is the realm of a secret Chinese technique known as borrowing force to strike back. The main character stands tall, looking down at his totally defeated opponent. Completely beaten, the blonde asks if Key used his own power to take him down. The young mercenary remembers the talk about nerves and realizes that whole chat was just bait. The kid confirms that the whole conversation was just to buy time until the hit took effect. Hurting on the floor, the guy admits it wasn't a bad move, and that his script got totally wrecked. Key then states that operatives always end up on the other side eventually, and while he used to be Campanula, he finishes by saying it was simply his turn to hit the dirt today. Using the absolute last of his strength, the young mercenary thanks Key for an incredible match. With a twisted smile, he says that this totally boring world seemed just a little bit more interesting with his opponent standing right there. And with a smile on his face, the young operative closes his eyes for the very last time. Key turns around and tells the punk to finally rest in peace. At that very moment, the kid notices Kuroki moving and turns around quickly. He turns and sees the shocking sight of Kuroki holding Akari as a hostage. With a sick smile, Kuroki readies his weapon right at Akari. Key gets totally furious seeing his boss being threatened like that.